Radhe Radhe. Welcome to our Bhagavad Gita study session today on Saturday, 20th January 2024. We'll present a recap of the content covered in today's class. So along with me here is Mummy.
Radhe Radhe.
Bringing up the screen, you'll see that we covered, after the usual recap quiz, chapter 8 verses 7 and 8. The recap quiz, of course, was for last time's content on chapter 8 verses 4, 5, and 6. As always, please do go through the material. The slides are available via the description below. Go through those questions, practice, review, and revisit, and then get into the content also that was covered, which will now briefly explain chapter 8 verse 7 and then chapter 8 verse 8. First up, chapter 8 verse 7.
Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhya cha mai arpit mano buddhihi mam evashyasya sanshayam.
So chapter 8, verse 7, the catchphrase is as a question, fight after surrender. As we explained in class, in a basic preliminary reading that looks to be contradictory, because if you have surrendered in a war or a battle, how then can you fight? But here, of course, the deeper meaning we see from Sri Krishna himself. It is a surrender of the mind and the intellect to Sri Krishna. After that, then, whether it is Arjun as a fighter in a battle, or it's a doctor performing his or her duties, it's an engineer, a housewife, a student, whatever profession or walk of life, all those duties can and in fact should continue simultaneously after, as Sri Krishna says, the surrender of the mind and the intellect. We explained in class the connection and how the verses have built up so far. Chapter 8, verse 4, Sri Krishna had explained, amongst other terms, the yajna. We covered that in class today as well, the Lord of all sacrifices. So one of the most primary sacrifices is that surrender of the mind and the intellect to Sri Krishna. And then chapter 8, verses 5 and 6, the concept of what would our choice be. We hope that we can remember God while relinquishing the body. To do that, as Swamiji had explained in the commentary previously, we need our inner consciousness or nature to be attuned to God at all times. Mommy mentioned satatam, constant. We'll see that in the next verse as well. So Sri Krishna here in chapter 8, verse 7, tells us that if we can all the time do our worldly work, but also remember him in parallel, then he has no doubt we shall certainly, definitely attain Sri Krishna. The commentary, of course, talks about a world life example as well that all of you can read at your own leisure. The essence of all of that was that Swamiji is reminding us about karma yoga. We can't just do karma all day and a little bit of yoga or sadhana or spiritual practices and say that that is karma yoga. It is to be constant. Mummy had read out and explained to us the Kabir Doha about the village women holding their pots of water. All of this helps us vividly remember the essence of karma yoga, doing our worldly duties while constantly remembering God. Otherwise, it's as if we're, just in one direction, which we don't want to have. In fact, as you all saw also in the flyer, the goal we have is we want to try to balance. And the balance is, as Sri Krishna says, the spiritual and the worldly duties, the remembrance of him along with our daily work and tasks. If that happens on this gymnastics, beam balance of life, we can certainly beam or smile with joy. Joy, of course, that happiness, that spiritual bliss that we all are seeking. So in essence, that is chapter 8, verse 7. And of course, do also want to mention, Mummy had told us about sanctify, that is to purify or make holy or sacred. We also have irreconcilable, which is in this case, talking about statements, they not being in harmony. So people think that spiritual and material pursuits are irreconcilable, but that is a fallacy. It is in fact totally consistent and culpable, hopefully many of you know, but causing to be blamed That is one other word to add to your English dictionaries for today. Next, we'll hear chapter 8, verse 8.
Abhyas yoga yuktena cetasa nanya paramam purusham divyam yati parthanuchintayan.
Chapter 8, verse 8, the catchphrase is devotion without deviation. So we again get more guidance from Sri Krishna of how we are supposed to stay, single-pointed in our aim and focus. So devotion without deviation. With practice, we saw the word again, abhyas, that we had learned earlier in chapter 6 for sure. With that constant practice, the training, the habituating of the mind to meditate upon God, we will learn and practice more and more that we can then remember Sri Krishna, the Supreme Divine Personality. And if we do that without deviating, then again, Sri Krishna says, we shall certainly attain him. In the commentary, Swamiji tells us that coming up shortly in chapter 8 and later in chapters 10 and 12, we'll see some examples of this similar terminology and guidance about constantly being engaged in meditating upon God. And again, the point is to do this constantly, to do it continuously throughout the day, throughout all the different activities that we pursue. When that happens, the mind gets purified, and that helps fashion or shape our future. That actually helps us get to that concept, that state of surrendering our mind and intellect to God. And when that happens at the right time, God himself will provide us his divine grace. Grace, remember, we had a reminder of it, that it is divine bliss, divine knowledge, and divine love. And when that happens, then within the body itself, the soul can be God realized. And then, of course, the next destination of the soul is God's abode. One thing I want to mention is to take us back to chapter 3, verse 30. And if I can make that happen. Right here, if many of you remember from several chapters ago, the sort of Rup Dhyan verse that we have often talked about, chapter 3, verse 30. Performing all works as an offering unto Sri Krishna, constantly meditate on him as the supreme. Become free from desire and selfishness, and with Arjun's mental grief departed, fight. So you see the essence of everything from today's chapters 8, verses 7 and 8, in chapter 3, verse 30 as well. All works as an offering, a sacrifice, a yagna to Sri Krishna, constant meditation on him, on Sri Krishna, and then fight, meaning perform whatever duties we are supposed to be doing. So please take note of that, chapter 3, verse 30. Now, for today's chapter 8, verses 7 and 8, we shall learn some important Sanskrit terminology and any other key takeaways.
Thank you, Gagan. And I want you to pay attention to word anusmara. Anusmara means remember. And another word is asanshaya. Asanshayaha. That means without any doubt. And another important word is arpit, surrender. All three words starting from A, anusmara, arpit, and asanshaya. That is the formula for sure shot success in reaching Shri Krishna. He is giving us this. He says that you have to train your mind and train your intellect also. How to train the intellect? When we have the right wisdom and knowledge from the scriptures and we understand them, and then without any doubt, we train our mind to follow that. Okay? And that is how then we can surrender to God, not bring any doubts. Surrender to God, and automatically Krishna is saying, keep on doing your duty. And how you do your duty? As Karma Yoga. How as Karma Yoga? When you have no attachment to the results of your actions. And all your actions, they need to be They need to be offered to Shri Krishna. They need to be done for the pleasure of Shri Krishna. Okay? Not for yourself. Not to think, what am I going to get out of it? Once you have that philosophy in life and you are constantly engaging in remembering God, it becomes just a habit. The way a mother is always concerned about her child. How can she think about her child all the time? She does everything. She does all the duties. But the welfare of child is always at the back of our mind. Similarly, we have to train our mind that we keep on remembering God. And how we will remember? When we will do it as an offering to God. And that is when our mind will actually win over the Maya's army generals. What are the Maya's army generals? They are the lust, anger, greed, envy, hatred, Kam, Krodh, Mad, Matsar. So that is when we'll be working like a true karma yogis. And then we will be able to sanctify our lives. We'll be able to purify our lives. That whatever we are doing for the pleasure of God. Our mind is all the time attached to God. And then from verse number 8, another word is from verse number 8. The similar word is anuchintayan. That also means constant remembrance. So, ananya chetaha satatam eva mana adhatsva tesham satata yuktanam. In different verses, Krishna is saying the same thing, that you do exclusive devotion. Exclusive devotion to God, fix your mind on God, always engage your mind in God, and those whose minds are always united with God, they are going to achieve God. They will become God realized. But how will they become? The very important word is abhyas. Abhyas, abhyas, and abhyas. Practice, practice, and practice. With practice, you can train your mind. You can make it habituated. Habituated to do what? Habituated to remember God at every moment. Whenever you are doing anything, you will be still remembering God. And that is how your consciousness means your chetana, that is always absorbed in God. When your mind and intellect are surrendered to God and you have exclusive devotion of God, that is when you receive God's grace. When you receive God's grace, then any karma you do, you will not be bonded. You will be getting freedom from this material bondage because you are doing your karma without attachment. And that is when you receive God's grace, which means you have divine bliss, divine knowledge, and divine love of God. And that is the formula that Prayan Kale, Ant Kale, at the time of that, you will be able to remember God's name. And when you remember God's name at the time of that, then you reach God's abode. So we all are having that goal whereby we want to meet Sri Krishna. And Sri Krishna is giving us that sure short formula. So let's follow it with exclusive devotion to God through different ways of praying to God. We make it a habit. We can do meditation, we can do japa, we can do kirtan, we can read scriptures, we can attend all the different sessions, and slowly we'll become like those women. What Saint Kabir says, can you show me that doha, Gagan? Saint Kabir says, Sumiran ki sudhi yon karo, ज्यों गागर पनिहार, बोलत डोलत सुरती में, कहे कबीर विचार. Those village ladies who are going to the well to get the water, they have the pot on their head, but they are walking, talking, going on the way, but nothing happens to their pot, it doesn't fall. Why? Because while walking, talking, doing their work, their mind is fully in that pot also. This way, a mother has her mind in her child. So we have to make our habit to keep God in our mind. Hope that helps to explain both the two verses. Over to you, Gagan.
Yep, thank you, Mommy. That does get us towards the end of our recap video. So again, chapter 8, verses 7 and 8 that we covered in class today. We do look forward to seeing you next week. It's going to be a week after hopefully all of you continuing to take part in the Get Closer to God campaign. And of course, in just another over a day or so, the Ram Mandir inauguration. Lots of devotion, lots of festivities all around the world. Lots to help us bridge that gap between where we individually currently are and where each of us is trying to go in our connection, in our union, in our yog to God. So happy festivities all along the way. And again, we shall meet next Saturday, 27th January 2024, same time, 8 a.m. Central in Dallas, 7:30 p.m. in India. Thank you so much. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.